From Alon Ben Meir website. Dear Prime Minister Netanyahu, the latest demonstration of Palestinians along the Gaza border with Israel that turned violent was no surprise to me, or perhaps to a multitude of Israelis and Palestinians as well. This tragic confrontation that resulted in the death of 120 Palestinians was not the first and will not be the last. Israel has waged 3 wars against Hamas and countless retaliatory strikes, and yet nothing has fundamentally changed. The sad thing is that nothing will change unless Israel accepts the reality that Hamas is the governing authority in Gaza, with whom you must come to terms to bring an end to this unabating tragedy. Your policy toward Gaza has and continues to be containment, but to what end? Hamas is a reality that you cannot change. Yes, you can decapitate its leaders, but new leaders of the same ilk will rise. These leaders may well be far more extremist, ready to make even greater sacrifices, knowing that no matter how much force you use, you will never prevail in subjugating 2 million Palestinians indefinitely. They will rise time and again and die, because for them, dying with honor is better than living in servitude at the mercy of what they view as a detestable power which has lost the last vestiges of moral accountability. When's the last time you imagined the utter misery that the Palestinians are experiencing day in and day out? When was the last time that you tried to understand the psychological and emotional disposition of the Palestinians? Just think. More than 80% of the Palestinians are under the age of 50 and were born under the occupation, having never experienced a day of freedom. 50 years of hopelessness and despair. 50 years of humiliation and submission. 50 years of fear and uncertainty. 50 years of deprivation. 50 years of dehumanization and degradation. Yes, 50 years of resentment, hatred, and loathing. When they wake up, they feel hopeless. When they retire to sleep, helplessness sets in. They are living in fear and trepidation, with no better day on the horizon. For them, freedom is just another word. They do not see themselves as militants or terrorists, they see victims, victimized from the day they were born. Prisoners of time, prisoners of a bitter fate, caring less about who is right or who is wrong. They yearn for a normal life, life with dignity and pride. You, Mr. Prime Minister, have skillfully brainwashed most Israelis to believe that every Palestinian is a terrorist, that Hamas is the incarnation of evil whose sole aim is the destruction of Israel. That Hamas is irredeemable, that they understand only the language of force. You deliberately want the conditions in Gaza to simmer to justify your extreme policies to keep Hamas at bay and the Israeli public living in fear. You are a fearmonger, hungry for power, and sadly most Israelis fell into your trap. They became complacent, indifferent, and unmoved by the horror unfolding in front of their eyes, but at a loss how to explain to their children 50 years of occupation and deprivation with no end in sight. The killing of a 21-year-old Palestinian nurse symbolizes the dark side of the ongoing conflict. Despite her medical vest, to an Israeli sniper she was just another target who was killed trying to save the life of a fallen demonstrator. It is time for reckoning, time to face the bitter reality, the reality of Hamas and 2 million Palestinians who are there and going nowhere. Your policies toward Hamas and the senseless killing of Palestinians has brought nothing but international condemnation. You are making Israel a pariah state, ruthless, self-absorbed, and immoral. It is time to be realistic and face the truth, time to think about Israel's future, time to change the dynamic of this struggle. It is time to chart a pathway that could bring an end to a consuming and debilitating conflict which is undermining Israel's security and eroding its social fabric and moral foundation. It is time to treat Gaza as a separate Palestinian entity, an entity with which Israel can, indeed must, live in peace as good neighbors, cooperating and thriving and progressing together. No, this is not a pipe dream. There is not a single Palestinian in Gaza who believes that Israel can ever be destroyed. Every sworn Hamas member knows only too well that Israel is here to stay and that the quality of their life, long-term prosperity, and security depend on Israel. Advertisement. It is time for every Israeli to also realize that as long as the Palestinians live under blockade, deprived of basic necessities, living in anguish and fear with little prospect of better days ahead, Israel will not know a day of real peace. It is time to treat Hamas not as a terrorist organization but as a governing body in control of 2 million Palestinians. You repeatedly said that Israel does not negotiate with terrorists, but you have been negotiating with Hamas directly and indirectly. You have been supplying Gaza with electricity, fuel, building materials, and medical equipment, and allowing foreign powers to provide Hamas with an array of commodities and financial assistance. Next, page 1. To share author on social media. The views expressed herein are the sole responsibility of the author and do not necessarily reflect those of this website or its editors.